Perona and Usopp became lifelong rivals? What if they slowly grew to respect one another over the course of their battles? What if they kissed in the new world? Haha, just kidding! Unless...
Hashtag slow burn. Hashtag enemies to lovers.
Hashtag coffee shop AU.
Welcome to our scariest season. The dead are here, they don't listen to reason. The Straw Hats arrive on the spookiest island. Zombies are dancing and spirits are flying.
Watch out! There's an invisible beast!
Watch out! The secrets go so deep.
The feeling in your throat is a worried scream. Could this nightmare be more than a dream? I'll try to keep our wits about us. Skeletons and samurai, what's the fuss?
Watch out! They're gonna come for your soul.
Watch out! They've got a demon on call!
Let's all hope that we survive as we travel on through Season 5. Did you hear that sound? We gotta go, 'cause now it's time for us to start the show!
Season 5 King of the What now?
Hello, fellow spooked adventurers of the Grand Line, and welcome to episode 93 of King of the What Now? We are a One Piece podcast that are reviewing the anime from the very beginning. I'm your host, Joel, and today I have taken on my big, buff, blue-skinned form, Nightmare Joel.
And I'm your co-host, Kat, and I have taken on my engorged form.
Very interesting use of the word engorged.
No, I'm sorry. Moria, creepy, this episode. We'll get into it, but I'm actually a part of a combo attack that is key in defeating a villain that's much too large for any one of us to take down alone.
Wow, incredible. Teamwork really does make the dream work.
Friendship was the key all along. What if the true monster was the lack of friends we made along the way?
All right. Now, before we get into these episodes, let's move into chatting with the hosts.
Yeah, what have you been doing this week?
All right, so we've discovered a new anime, and it is relatively new. It only has 8 episodes out as of this recording, and we knew that we wanted to watch it, but it took us a little while to get around to starting it. Once we started it, we couldn't put it down. What's the full title? I know it's called, like, My Life as a Villainess, All Roads Lead to Doom, I think?
It's something like that. I think it's My Next Life as a Villainess, All Paths Lead to Doom.
Exactly. Okay, so there's a girl whose name we actually don't know from her first life, but she dies and she gets isekai'd into another world. You see it all the time. But she gets reincarnated into a dating game as the villainess of the story. Not as the main character, not as one of the love interests, but as the person who is either killed or exiled at the end of the game, no matter which of the love interests you choose to pursue as the player. So she decides she doesn't want to die or get exiled, and so she starts trying to, like, change the relationships a little bit. You know, this guy he has a rivalry with his brother, so she tries to get him to get along with his brother a little bit better, and that sort of thing. And it is wonderful. I love this story so far.
Yeah.
And you feel the same way, I believe.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The main character, Katarina, is so cute, and she's so stupid. Like, this is kind of turned into a reverse harem story. Every single other character in the show is in love with her, and she just hasn't noticed. She's just like, how nice, I haven't had any of the doom flags pop up. Everything is going along well. But she doesn't see all these people are, like, ready to go to war with each other for her attention.
Yes, in one episode there was a mystery artifact that showed them what they most desired, and some of them were pretty explicit, and afterwards she was just like, oh, you all, I don't know, she just brushes it off. She doesn't think about it at all. The first 3 episodes take place during childhood, and they're all adorable little children that you just want to, you want to squish them like they're little marshmallows, and then they're 15 and a little bit, like, little older for some of them later in the series, and they're great. I really like it. The comedy is great. I love the theme song. She has this little inner monologue, I guess, except there's 5 different parts of her personality, each dressed up in a different way, and they decide on the next course of action and whatnot, so.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm not usually into isekai, but this is probably one of the best shows of the season, in my opinion.
For sure. Like I said, we binged it as soon as we started watching it. It's great. It's not your traditional isekai, so if you're looking for, like, magic battles and that sort of thing, you'd have to check out one of the other ones, but we really like it, and we could not recommend it more. We've also been watching Fruits Basket. We talked about that in our February bonus episode. We're curious to see where the story goes, because we haven't actually ever gotten to the end of this story. This is as far as either of us have ever gotten into plot. And Akito is actually doing things.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
We've finally discovered that he's not actually a Zodiac member, so I'm really excited to find out what his deal is.
Yeah.
How did he end up in charge of the family if he's not part of the Zodiac?
I really have no idea. He crazy, and I hope that they are able to set up his backstory in such a way that I can actually believe why he's so crazy. Because if it's just like, my mom accidentally left me in the cereal aisle too long when I was 6, and then she came and got me, like, that wouldn't justify his actions.
For sure.
Okay. And then we also went through and watched the first season of One Punch Man. And that was for our bonus episode that came out in June. And I really liked it. I like One Punch Man, and I was glad to go back and see some of the early stuff. And having now caught up on the manga, it's interesting how much stuff was kind of foreshadowed and set up in those first 11, 12 episodes.
Absolutely. Well, and you sent me some screen caps from the current manga, and the art is just phenomenal, whether you're going by the anime or the manga.
Yes, for sure. They put a lot of effort into that manga to make it a little bit different than the webcomic. The webcomic is great, but one is mostly, I would say, more of a writer than he is an artist.
Yes. We also have, this is the last thing probably for our week, but we've been logging into the Full Spectrum podcast stream once a week.
Yes.
They do that Tuesdays at 7
Central Time, I believe.
Central Time. It's always so hard for me to remember time zones. But they're great. They're just a group of guys who talk about nerdy stuff, the full spectrum of nerd stuff, so video games, TV shows, whatever. And they're a lot of fun, and the chat is really nice, and it's just a fun, silly time.
Yes, I absolutely love it.
It makes me want to do more streaming, so if you're listening to this and you would want to participate in a stream that we did, you can tell me on Twitter.
Absolutely. So we just finished watching episodes 365 through 374. That's a big stretch of episodes, but actually the summary is pretty simple because it all kind of centered around one major conflict. So Perona wakes up and she decides that she's going to leave Thriller Bark. She's going to steal the Thousand Sunny with all of the treasure and food that are on the island, so she starts preparing to do that. Nami wakes up just as Absalom's about to forcibly marry her, and together with Lola, they are able to take him out, and she's able to escape. When she goes back to the ship, Bartholomew Kuma is there, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, and he is asking about Moria's whereabouts. When Perona tries to fight him, she is killed or disappeared or something. It happened so fast that Nami's not even sure what happened. And then he asks Nami a couple of questions, and then he moves off. While all that's going on, everyone else is fighting Oars, because Oars is out to kill everyone. So you got Sanji, Frankie, Brooke, Usopp, everyone teaming up to try to take down Oars. And just when you think that they're getting the upper hand and he's taking a lot of damage, Moria appears and can use Oars' stomach as a cockpit, and his intelligence and his powers are able to make up for the fact that Luffy's shadow is kind of an idiot. Luffy, while trying to chase Moria, ends up finding the Victim Association, I think it's called. All the people that have had their shadows stolen that live in fear of Moria out in the forest. And they've discovered a secret. You can actually grab the shadows as they're being purified out of people's bodies, and then you can put the shadow inside of a living being, and they get stronger, and they learn the techniques of that shadow. But it can't last because you can't put shadows inside things that have souls, living beings. Okay. They take 100 shadows, stuff it into Luffy, and the final battle begins where he just thrashes Oars and Moria. He knocks them both out. And then, after all of his energy is expended, he's collapsed on the ground. Oars gets back up, but all of the Straw Hats rally around. They deliver one last combo that ends up killing Oars, and they're like, great, now we've won, right? No, because Moria wakes up and he absorbs 1,000 shadows and he becomes Nightmare Moria, or Engorged Moria if you're like us and you just find that word very funny. But Luffy ends up beating him and the day is saved. And
that's a great succinct summary.
Succinct summary!
I'm gonna ask a stupid question.
Yes.
Do you like these episodes?
Yes. Of all of the pieces of Thriller Bark, the build-up and the mystery and, like, what's going on here, Hogback's interactions, Absalom's interactions, the best part of this arc, I think most people would agree, is the Straw Hat crew minus Luffy, and Nami and Brook take a little while to show up too, but everyone trying to fight Oars and then Luffy fighting Moria are two of the highlights of this arc. I love it so much.
For sure. Well, and this is the first, like, major whole crew fight that we've had, and
Absolutely.
the first whole crew total party wipe that we've had. And that's very stressful to watch.
Absolutely.
But the combo attacks are so cool. I love that Frankie has been, like, strategizing with the doofus members of the crew, with Usopp and Chopper, and they have this whole, like, docking plan where they become robots planned out.
It's like they're combining, like in Power Rangers, to form the Mechazord.
Mm-hmm. I love when Frankie and Chopper attack Oars together. It's the Fropper Gong, because it's their names combined. Just stuff like that. Like, I wish that we got more opportunities for the Straw Hats to fight together. I think it's very cool.
Yes. Well, and I think that this arc kind of marks the point where they start teaming up a little bit more in their fights and stuff like that, or they might fight an opponent that's so strong that it requires multiple of them to team up. And I honestly do wonder, because Luffy and the others are so young compared to the seasoned veterans out there, and the New World is the scary place, and there's 4 emperors, I imagine that more fights going forward will be team battles, and it wouldn't surprise me if there was another creature of the same size or power of Oars that they have to, hey, doesn't this remind you of that time that we all fought together? Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have my fingers crossed that this is kind of like foreshadowing for something that's going to happen later.
Absolutely.
New information we got in these episodes. We met Bartholomew Kuma.
Yes, I mean, technically we have seen him before. He shows up with Doffy after Crocodile's been defeated, but I don't think we got speaking lines from him, not very much, and we have a little bit more from him now.
Right, but we did get to see him use his power, which appears to be he can boop people and they disappear.
Yes. So Nami definitely believes that Perona is dead, but the thing is, even when I was new to the series and these chapters were relatively new to me, I still didn't believe that she was actually dead, because right before he does whatever he does, he says, if you would like to go on a trip, where would you go? And she's like, oh, a spooky castle that's just haunted all the time. And then she disappears. And that's a weird question to ask randomly. So we don't really know what's going on with him. Moria confirms, like, I know how your powers work. So he has powers of some sort.
Yeah, he asks Moria that same question. Moria's like, don't you do that shit with me.
I'm too old for this. Oh, God.
And I will say that I'm with you. I have never been particularly intimidated by Kuma's powers, even when he first showed up and it was supposed to be a mystery, because it seems obvious. He asks where you want to go, and then he boops you. He's probably sending you to the place you wanted to go to.
Although I do wonder what happens if you say something crazy, like, I want to go to space. That would kill you, if he sends you somewhere like that.
I want to go somewhere where I can become the Dragon King. Can he isekai you if you say, I want to be reborn in another world?
I don't know.
But anyway, he's a warlord of the sea, and we also found out that the world government is invested in the Straw Hats not defeating another warlord.
Absolutely.
So he is here to offer Moria his assistance, and Moria's like, I don't need your
That's actually
assistance.
what leads Moria to getting in the robot, as it were, because he's like, I'll show you, which is really interesting, because what pirate worth their salt would accept help from another pirate, So it almost feels like Kuma asked that question knowing that it would frustrate Moria and cause him to jump into the fight, so I don't know, maybe we'll have to revisit that later. We don't know much about Kuma. We do know that he was one of the most, bloodthirsty or destructive pirates on the seas. I think he was known as, the Tyrant when he was a pirate. But now he is the most obedient of the 7 warlords of the sea. He obeys the government to a T.
Also, he carries around a Bible.
Yep.
But I don't think it's actually a Bible. I think it's where he writes down, places that he's been. Because he asks Perona, where would you like to go? And she says, I want to go somewhere spooky with lots of castles and atmosphere. And he flips through this book and he goes, yeah, okay, got it. And then he boops her.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's his Bible, but it's not the Bible.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. We also got more information from the conversation between Moria and Kuma that Blackbeard is the next warlord of the sea, we have official confirmation that his bounty was 0. Not that he didn't have one, that his bounty was 0, and that he's going to be the 7th Warlord of the Sea to fill the vacant spot left by Crocodile. Now, this is kind of foreknowledge because I don't know if this idea would have struck me going through. In fact, I don't remember it ever occurring to me. The way Ace versus Blackbeard ended, it technically didn't show you who won or who lost. But it did show the hat upside down, so it implied that Ace lost. But if Blackbeard had lost, I think Ace would have killed him for the price of killing a crewmate. And so the fact that Blackbeard's still alive and he's becoming a Warlord of the Sea suggests that Ace lost that battle, or he had to run from that battle in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what I want to know.
Yep.
Why was his bounty 0? Like, clearly they wanted him because they set a bounty for him, but they weren't willing to pay for him. Does that mean anything? I don't know.
Well, we do have to remember that Blackbeard originally came from Whitebeard's crew. I don't know if originally, but that's where he was when he killed Thatch. That's what caused Ace to go after him. And we know that Whitebeard is one of the 4 warlords of the sea, one of these, like, impressively powerful pirates, which we've mostly been told, not shown so far, but that aside, I think everyone who is on Whitebeard's crew, no matter how scrawny or how weak they look, get a bounty because they might have information on how to capture Whitebeard or something. Like, what if the Emperors have a base of operations but nobody knows where it is? If you capture this Marshal D. Teach fellow, maybe he'll be able to tell you where that headquarters are or how to get there or something. But I think it also suggests that he has done nothing noteworthy. Because Nami and Chopper and Frankie, all of them have gotten bounties because of their attack on Eni's lobby. But if Blackbeard has a bounty of 0, he must be very specifically trying to stay out of the spotlight, or he just has no ambition whatsoever.
Yeah, I could see that. Was there any other new information we got? We learned that Moria can do Shadows Asgard. He can stuff 1,000 shadows into himself.
Yes, and people might notice, Asgard, that sounds kind of familiar. Is that from one of those fangled Thor movies? And you are correct. It's the same Asgard that exists in Norse mythology that is also used in the comics and the movies for Thor. That's just a thing. And, yeah, we saw Broggy and Dory and how they were dressed, and they had kind of a Viking look, so, yeah, I would definitely say that it makes sense to kind of think of the giants as an analogy for Iceland and Greenland and the Scandinavian countries in this universe, which is interesting. But Moria isn't a giant, so I don't know.
But he makes himself giant.
That's
by
true.
Stuffing himself with shadows. Do you think he could do more than 1,000, or do you think this is his limit? Because they indicated, like, even for him, this is a tough number of shadows to keep down.
Yes, well, and they said that when they try to put shadows inside, so we meet a woman named Lola, which is strange. I think I remember the name Lola from somewhere else in this arc.
Oh, yeah, talking about new characters and new information.
Totally forgot about Lola and the Risky Brothers. And apparently a couple of her other crewmates have names too, if you look on the wiki, but I've never learned them. I've only ever known the Risky Brothers and Lola.
Moria calls them something like the Forest Failures or something. Like, he has a name for this group of sad people without shadows that lives in the woods.
Exactly. But we meet this woman, Lola, and she has been rejected from marriage 4,443 times, and the moment she sees Luffy, she proposes and he says no, so now it's been 4,444. But her crew have been taking shadows looking for their own, and they tried stuffing the shadows in each other, and they pass out after 2 or 3. But Luffy has such an incredible willpower that he can handle 100, and Moria is so scary, and he's the master of the power, and he could take in 1,000. But I assume that Moria could take in more shadows if he had a stronger drive. He wants to be king of the pirates, but he wants other people to do it, whereas Luffy wants to do it on his own, and so I think that factors into it too.
Yeah, well, and I think he would have to train his devil fruit power, and I think he's a little too lazy for that. You know, quirks are physical too, so if he practiced taking in shadows, he could probably get up to like 5,000.
Yes, but after the shadows have been stuffed inside Luffy, they immediately go back to their owners, I believe. And so I do wonder if it makes sense for Moria to use this power except as a last resort, because I think even if he puts them into himself, I think they still go back after the time limit.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't think of... We did get official confirmation that the shadows can't be put inside living things, and they use the word soul, which, you know, the shonen manga, battle manga category is very familiar with spiritual powers. Dragon Ball had a character that came back from the dead. It had people who can make the evil in your heart expand and that sort of thing. And quirks, although they're, you know, technically part of the physiology, they seem kind of magic-ish in certain senses. So it doesn't really surprise me that the idea of a soul could exist, but it also kind of plants the seeds that, like, yeah, people believe in souls in this world, and there is something that separates a living creature from a dead creature. There's a reason that Brook counts as alive, even though he's just a skeleton.
Well, and I wonder if it's related to the idea of will and inherited will, because if you've got a person in a body and they have a will of their own, and then you've got this shadow that carries the will of the person it came from, you can't have two competing wills in one body, man. That's confusing.
Interesting. You know what that really reminds me of? It reminds me of devil fruits, not being able to have two inside the same body, because that would be... the demons would come out. I don't know if there's truth to that. That's not us speculating based off of prior knowledge. It's mostly going off of theories that people have had, but yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I like that connection. What were your favorite quotes or moments from these episodes? We have a long list of quotes, but I'm curious, like, did any stand out as, like, the best to you?
So I think that you have one from Moria that you would like to read, because when he said the line, you're like, that's really cool. But my favorite moment in this arc, the one down, as I call it, I believe one of the earlier fan dubs or fan subs called it that, when they all combo attack and they finally get Oars to fall over and his horns get stuck. That's a great scene. But my absolute favorite moment from all of Thriller Bark is that last battle against Nightmare Moria, and Luffy uses both Gear 2nd and Gear 3rd. And at one point, Moria traps Luffy inside of a box of shadows and is just stamping on it repeatedly, which, that's not a threat to Luffy. He's made out of rubber. But anyways, he's crushing it and he says, "This is your baptism. This is what happens when a whippersnapper tries to act like a big shot on these waters. This is what you get for defying one of the 7 warlords. Know your place. The world is devised to crush anyone who stands out."
Big words from a man with, like, a weird body and horns. Like, you stand out pretty clearly, buddy.
Yeah, but we also know that he has some kind of complex about his entire crew getting killed. And in fact, I think he mentioned in an earlier episode that he was defeated by someone named Kaido, but it's interesting because they really want to hammer in the point that the new world is different. You're not ready for it. That's what the filler arc with Puzzle was about. He lost his mojo after he traveled there and he came back. Moria's here like, you don't know shit, you're gonna get destroyed. And even when he willingly releases the shadows, his internal monologue is something along the lines of, let's see how you cower before the power of the new world and whatever. So it's just interesting.
Do you think that we could see... I doubt we would lose all of the Straw Hats, but do you think we could see a party death when they get to the New World as kind of like part of that, you weren't ready for this?
I can't see it. Shonen doesn't usually have death of the main characters and stuff. Like, could you imagine if Bakugo or Todoroki was killed in My Hero? It doesn't seem likely. But also it seems like in any of the movies, when something happens to Luffy's crew, movie number 6, Bar and Atsumori, he seemed to kind of blue screen, like lose any will to do anything for a second while they're dead, and so I can't see it. But if Oda did pull something like that, it would be very shocking, and it would be very noteworthy.
It would be effective, for sure. One of my favorite moments was, we mentioned the Frankie docking, I believe, and they tried to get Robin to join on, and Usopp was like, do what I'm doing, hold your arms like this.
Yeah, because Sanji and Zoro were the legs, Frankie was the body, Chopper became like an extra head, and Usopp was like a claw. He used his arms to create a giant claw.
Right, so they're acting like she doesn't understand what to do, rather than she doesn't want to do it, and she goes, no. And they went, she said no? And then she says, it would hurt my human pride. And we see shots of Usopp, Chopper, and Frankie each reacting to a different word. So it would hurt her human pride, and then she says it again, and they go, she said it again!
Oh, God.
I found that really delightful. I get the impression that Robin has had to do a lot of things over the course of her life that she didn't necessarily want to do or wasn't proud of. And so now that she's free and has friends, she's going to do what she wants. And she's not going to do stupid shit like that because she doesn't have to.
Two other alternative reads on it, though. I agree with what you're saying. I like that idea. Number one, it could further sell the fact that in this universe, boys are into robots and transformations and stuff, and women typically aren't. And so I wonder if Frankie was super excited to try this combo attack, and Usopp and Chopper were because they're all boys at heart. But Robin as a woman is like, that's really freaking weird.
Yeah. I did like that Zoro and Sanji had no idea what was happening, and they were angry about it after the fact.
Yeah, Zoro's like, I can't believe I agreed to something like that. But here's my other observation, my other possibility. What if Big Emperor is too powerful? Like, the fight would be over in an instant, and then there'd be no challenge for the rest of the series. So maybe Robin refusing is actually just a plot device to keep us from seeing the full power that is Docking System 15.
Maybe if she had joined in, they would have actually had a fusion.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's her fault that it didn't work. Okay, I like that. You mentioned there was a Moria quote that I really liked. I believe the one that you meant was, even the threat of death is meaningless before pirates.
You gotta sell that line even better, man.
What? Fine, you do it. Let me hear it.
So Oars has finally been defeated, like, for the third time. He's been knocked down once before, he got thrashed by Nightmare Luffy, and then he got back up, and then they crushed his spine, which is just incredible. But Oars has finally been defeated, and Moria's explained a couple of times, like, even if he's killed, or even if he's knocked unconscious, it won't return the shadows of people. He has to say shadows return. So Lola and these other kind of riff-raff pirates, I guess, they're like, we've got to wake Moria up. And then you hear the sound of Moria's foot, like, stamping down. He's like, I'm already awake. He is bloody. He is bruised. He's breathing heavily, and he's standing on top of Oars' stomach, having climbed out or whatever. And they're like, hey, Moria, give us back our shadows, or we'll kill you. And he just gives them this ice-cold glare, and he goes, the threat of death is meaningless before pirates.
Oh, God. People give Moria a hard time. They see him as, like, this silly dude. That was legitimately badass.
Yeah.
I looked at you, and I went, that line was too badass for Moria. They should have given it to Crocodile.
Yes, absolutely. Here's the thing about why Buggy and Foxy and Moria, to me, canonically are jokes. And I know that you really like Foxy and Moria. I'm not debating that they're interesting or fun characters. But the reason why no one would ever look at them and say, oh no, a plausible threat, or oh no, they'll have a plausible impact on the plot, is because One Piece is all about wills. Roger had the will to become king of the pirate. Zoro has the will to become the world's greatest, strongest swordsman. Luffy has the will to become the pirate king. The Justice people, the Marines, they have the will to become powerful Marines. Moria and Buggy and Foxy are kind of like three of the least interested in pursuing things people there are. They don't really seem to have ambition. Moria literally has other people doing things for him. And Buggy, we haven't really seen much of him since his initial introduction, but he also seems a little bit like, prop me up so I can use your strength or whatever.
He wants treasure, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Moria wants an army of zombies so that nobody can ever die again, which is actually really heartbreaking. Like, I feel bad for him.
For sure, yeah. But it's just the reason that there's a cognitive dissonance between Moria's badass, the threat of, death doesn't scare me, and our prior conception is because our prior conception was he was literally lounging on his side in the, like, sexy pose, like I'm on the beach, head propped up on the hand, while his shadow fought Luffy. And so it's weird to see someone who wasn't taking our protagonist seriously suddenly be like, death doesn't scare me.
Yeah. No, I really love Moria. I don't think I loved him the first time I saw this arc, and I think I've mentioned that before, but I've grown extremely attached to him on this rewatch. And no spoilers, but we mentioned when we switched over to it just being you and me as opposed to having a newbie on the podcast that sometimes foreknowledge would come in.
Yeah.
I do have reason to believe that Moria could come back in the current arc, and I really hope that he do it.
Yeah.
That he does. I think
he really do
cool.
be like that, though. Well, and none of the villains in One Piece are killed. Like, Crocodile is in some prison. Arlong, I believe, is in some prison, but none of them have been explicitly stated to be dead. Not even Spandam, whose spine was literally shown to have broken by Robin. They're all still alive, and maybe some of them will hold grudges. And so Moria seems like the sort of person who holds a grudge, you know? He lost his crew a long time ago, and he's still like, the reason they failed me is because they were mortal. Like, he seems like the sort of person who might try to formulate a plan to come after Luffy.
I could see that.
Maybe all 7 of the warlords will form a union. We gotta get that guy who kicked our ass!
Do you think he's gonna just, like, keep kicking their ass one after another, or do you think we're gonna have a villain who's not a warlord at some point?
Well, no, we're gonna have villains that aren't warlords. Eneru wasn't a warlord, but I do think that when you say something like, oh yes, the 7 warlords of the sea, the 3 admirals, the 4 emperors, like, you are explicitly saying, in anime usually, you're gonna meet all of these characters.
That's fair. The 10 Rikogus, or whatever they are from Bleach.
The 10 Espada.
Espada!
The 13 captains. You know, I think Naruto had 12 ninja squads or something. And yeah, anyways, yeah. So usually when a show like that tells you a number, unless it's a ridiculous number, if it's like the army of 10,000, like, you're not going to meet 10,000 individual characters. But for small groups of elite soldiers, hell yeah, you're going to meet all of them.
Okay. Another favorite moment of mine from these episodes, although it wasn't really a moment so much as it was all of the episodes, was the Straw Hats combo attacks. We've already talked about this, but it's going to keep coming up because the Straw Hats are a little family, right? And they all know each other so well, and watching them play off one another's strengths and weaknesses is really cool. Usopp knows Luffy inside and out. He proved that in Water 7. And so watching him fight this thing that has Luffy's personality was awesome.
Well, and at one point, Usopp, I think it's Usopp, but someone literally says, hey, that's Luffy's shadow, right? And everyone else is like, yeah. And then I think it's Usopp. I'm almost positive it's Usopp. But he says, that means he has all of Luffy's weaknesses, right? And so they immediately are like, there's a giant pile of meat over there. He goes, where? And he looks over there. It's like, oh, so good. I love it so much. There's a part when after they've knocked Oars down, like to his knees or something. That's right, that's when they made him look at the pile of meat. This is literally is the exact next scene. They hit him in the back of the knees with Frankie's giant nunchucks, and I think Zoro uses his swords, and he falls on his knees. They're running away, and Frankie goes, does that count as another down? Because I guess they're counting it like in football or something. Like, we knocked him down once before, is this our second? And someone else goes, well, even if we had a set of rules, no one would be following them anyways. And, like, that's the chaotic energy you expect from protagonists that are also pirates.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things about the different people we encounter in this show is that they all have their own ideas of what pirates are.
Yes.
So, like, Moria saying the thing about a pirate isn't going to be afraid of death. Like, that's his conception of what a pirate is, which is funny because he's super afraid of death, if his whole zombie thing is anything to be believed.
For sure.
But then this is an example of the Straw Hats' beliefs about what pirates are. They're people who don't play by the rules, even if they have rules, which they don't, because pirates.
For sure, yeah. There is one rule, don't pull out a gun if you're not willing to use it, but none of them have guns, so that's not really a point that's going to come up.
And if they did have guns, they'd probably use them. Like, Frankie shoots his beans or whatever.
Yeah, beans left is when he's out of coal and he can't fire them, just to be clear. Those aren't actual beans that he's firing into people's heads, but that would be kind of funny.
Right, and Zoro's attack is called, like, 200 worlds.
Yep.
No, it's like Senzen Sakai. It's like 3,000 worlds.
It's 3,000 worlds is his secret technique.
I was just trying to be difficult. I was hoping you'd get mad.
Gotcha. No, the combo attacks are great, and we have that line that's used in so many AMVs and such, that was back in Alabasta when they're talking to Chopper about being on a team or whatever, being on this crew is, I do what I can, you do what you can, and if you don't finish the fight, I'll kick your ass or something like that. So there's a part where Zoro is running past Robin with the giant nunchucks that he's swinging around with the swords or whatever, and he goes, Robin, get his joints. And then he trusts Sanji to launch him in the air. He uses the nunchuck to knock the arm like almost behind his back, and then Zoro trusts Robin to use her hands to pin his arm behind his back. And Sanji got Oars' attention so that Usopp could use an oil slick to make his hand slip. And then, it's so good.
Well, and what a great comparison to the Straw Hat crew, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Luffy, meanwhile, is trying to take down Moria.
Mm-hmm.
He's trusting his crew to deal with Oars. He's not there micromanaging them. And even when he shows up, he doesn't really tell them what to do. At one point, Chopper points him in the direction to go. Whereas Moria doesn't trust other people at all. Like, as soon as he thinks maybe the fight won't go his way, he takes control of how Oars is fighting.
Oh yeah, they butt heads with Oars, with Luffy's personality being like, butt out of my fight. And Moria's like, no, I'm gonna take over here.
Yeah.
So that's just all good. I think that there is, honestly, sometimes with our cold opens, most of the time we go for joking, but every once in a while, I try to get a little like, in this episode, the philosophy of man is explored through the themes of blades and birds. But if you look at this arc, there actually is a really interesting kernel to it that I'm not sure I necessarily felt in the Alabasta Saga. Alabasta was a great arc. I loved Vivi. I love all of the Straw Hats, but I don't know if Crocodile really had a philosophy that said much outside of war bad. But Moria, you can't take a shadow from one person and put it inside the body of another person because they have a soul. And you have to have a certain amount of willpower to be able to take in shadows and this, that, and the other thing. But when he takes people's shadow, he's more or less taking their hope. Like, we ask the question, what about someone underneath a light bulb or in the light of a fire? Would their bodies burn if their shadows were taken? And the answer is no, only sunlight. Well, why sunlight? Because sunlight represents a certain amount of freedom. We talk about sailing the ocean with the sun on our skin and that sort of thing. And so losing your ability to go out in the sun is more or less like being dead already. And that's why zombies are in this arc. It's thematically powerful. And so at one point, Moria sees some of these ruffians, the people on Lola's crew that have lost their shadows, and he says, the most losers like you all hiding in the forest can do is pray. He knows he's taken their hope, and he knows that they're not going to do anything, because if they were going to, they already would have.
Yeah.
And so it's a powerful line, and it's just, this arc really does have some very interesting things to say.
Well, and Lola's standing there as Luffy is fighting Moria, and she and her whole crew have indicated that this is their last hope to defeat Moria.
This is like the only time that the mansion's ever been this damaged.
Yeah, if Luffy can't do it, then they have basically accepted that they're SOL, right? And the sun starts to rise, and she catches fire, and her crew goes, Lola, you have to get into the shadows, and she says, I'll never go back to hiding in the shadows, because she has put her all into Luffy. And so if he fails, she's ready to accept death.
Yes.
Because it's better than living with this constant, living like she's dead, basically.
Well, and not only that, but she said, I will never go back to hiding in the shadows, that's why Luffy is the protagonist of the story that we need, He empowers other people. Everywhere he goes, he meets these people. He meets Conus, and he meets Vivi, and he meets Choo Choo the dog. He meets all of these people that want things, but can't achieve it on their own. They rely on other people to do it for them. But in the end, Luffy ends up kind of lifting them and getting them to adopt his ideology of, you do what you can do. Do it the best you can. And so I think that once Lola gets her shadow back, which happened at the end of these episodes, I think that her and her crew will go out, and I think they'll be stronger for it. I think that they will never hide in the shadows again, and they'll be badasses.
I love that. I also there's a moment where Moria has risen again, and all of the Straw Hats seem kind of down and out, right? Yes. And Lola's crew is like, we have to run for it. They've abandoned us. What's going to happen to us?
Slight correction, that was when Oars got back up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe you should do this scene, because your memory is a little better than mine.
I have obsessively watched the end scenes for Thriller Bark again and again and again. They've knocked Oars down. In the scene right before that, Luffy had saved Usopp and Nami. They were the only two conscious members of the team left. Everyone else was out cold through various trickery. And Luffy is now exhausted from all of the shadows that were inside of his body. It's a taxing experience having those inside of you. And then Oars gets back up and everyone's freaking the heck out. And then some of the riffraff, some of the people who don't have names are just like, hey, wasn't there a person over here? What? Did the skeleton move? And Luffy's like, guys, let me get in one more shot and I can defeat Oars. And Nami appears and she's like, all right, Captain, we've been setting up for a counterattack. And one of Lola's crewmates, I don't think that they have a name, is the moment Oars stood back up, they began their counterattack.
Yes. Well, and the reason this moment is powerful for me is because there's definitely a moment where they think that the Straw Hats who are still alive are abandoning them. Mm-hmm. They think that they've run away. And so that moment when they realize, no, these people aren't run away, they're going to keep fighting. We should keep fighting in whatever way that we can, even if that's just witnessing this battle.
Yeah, for sure.
Is very powerful.
And it's very shonen, too, to have these characters be passed out, but then apparently the moment their captain used up all of his strength and wouldn't be able to do it on his own anymore, they apparently all regained consciousness, all immediately without saying anything out loud, snuck away from these other pirates, and set up an elaborate set of whatever. So I think I already mentioned, like they pinned Oars' arm behind him and they made his other hand slip on oil, and then Sanji got the final attack against the ankle. What they do here is Frank and Usopp build a machine, which Nami makes it rain on Oars' legs, and this machine funnels all the cold so his legs are frozen, now he can't move. Sanji hooks a chain around Oars' neck and then pulls it straight so his spine, instead of being S-shaped, is now straight up so he won't be able to absorb the impact. Robin creates extra legs for Brook to jump on so he can carry Luffy up to the top of Thriller Bark and then throw him like a rubber surface-to-air missile, except in this case, I guess it would be like air-to-surface missile. And then Luffy, even though he's too exhausted to have climbed up there, now that he's falling, he uses double gear third and smashes Oars, and the spine breaks, and even though he can't feel pain, he can't get back up.
It's so good. This is the scene that you played for me that got me to start watching One Piece clips on my own. And eventually you went, hey, stop doing that. You're going to have things spoiled for you, which is very silly of you. But it's excellent. Even not knowing the crew, it's excellent. But knowing them makes it even better. Do you have any other quotes or quick notes you want to hit up before we get into speculation for the next set of episodes?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Moria smashing Luffy. I already said that scene. I forgot that I wrote down the other quote. My bad. But he's basically like, this is your baptism. Welcome to the new world. I'm going to beat the shit out of you until you accept that you're powerless. And then Luffy breaks out of the shadow box and he goes, it doesn't matter if I'm a whippersnapper or if I stand out. No one can crush you. And Moria's like, no one can crush you? You think you're invincible? That just proves you're naive. And then Luffy says, because I'm made out of rubber. And Moria has this look on his face like he's just been slapped. Did she just okay boomer me? But all of the other crew, Zoro and Nami and Robin, they're all smiling. They're like, yeah, that's already a captain.
I desperately want Luffy to fight somebody who's made of glue.
Oh man, that'd be strange. The other thing I wanted to point out is at the beginning of this fight, before the crew kind of all came together and decided to attack at once, I believe Sanji attacked Oars first because he was so you got in the way of me protecting Nami. I gotta take you out so I can go save her. And Oars is pretty battle savvy, very strong, and surprisingly agile. And he, at one point, catches Sanji and is going to crush him to death. And who steps up to protect Sanji? Zoro would be good because then you'd have shipping fodder, but it's Usopp. Usopp, the one who is probably the most afraid. Nami's not here at this point. Usopp, the one who is least confident in his ability, decides to set Oars on fire because one of the crew is in trouble and he steps up. Mm-hmm. And it's just beautiful. No one looks at him like, Usopp, I'm so surprised you did it. You have to notice it yourself, but it's brilliant when you notice it.
Good job, Usopp. Oh man. I've mentioned before that I'm pretty open to other people's ideas when it comes to fandom stuff. If somebody else really loves a character, chances are I will start to love that character too, even if just because I associate them with that person, and every time I see the character I go, hey, it's that guy. But I'm the same way with ships, and so I recently followed someone on Twitter who is a big Usopp Sanji shipper, and when I first saw that, I went, Usopp Sanji, what are you talking about? But no, I'm on board now. There's a scene where they're both all beaten up and they're holding hands while they're, like, unconscious.
Interesting.
On the Sunny, and I don't know if that happened before and I missed it, or if that's a future scene, but damn.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, I will say, on a quick note, this is not a shipping episode, but Sanji did give Usopp his goggles back after Usopp lost to Mr. 2 and then Sanji beat up Mr. 2, and that is a very touching scene. I didn't read it romantically, but the more I see evidence that, like, these two interact with each other a lot, like, more than, say, Sanji and Frankie, the more I can say, okay, yeah, I see.
Well, and, like, a big part of this is because Sanji's supposed to be the kindest member of the crew, but the scene where he's, like, trying to check on Usopp without directly checking on Usopp when Usopp has left the crew.
Ah, yes.
Or him being one of the first ones who really wants Usopp to come back. Like, it's all good.
Absolutely.
What do you think the next set of episodes holds in store for us? Like, are they going to have to fight Kuma? And if they do have to fight Kuma, how?
I don't know. I believe that Kuma said that he was sent here just to relay news to Moria, and that he wasn't ordered to attack the Straw Hats. At the same time, the world government sent him here because they didn't want another warlord being defeated, and now Moria has been defeated. And I can't remember if this was shown in the preview or if this was like an end of the episode kind of zinger, but Kuma was definitely ordered to take out the Straw Hats. So you bring up an excellent point. How are they going to fight Kuma when all of them are in the state that they're in? I mean, for God's sake, Luffy used 100 shadows, then gear thirded, and then gear seconded and third at the same time, after Chopper and Usopp both explicitly, and Frankie, I think, mentioned something too, said, this is bad, don't push yourself this hard. So, I highly doubt Luffy will be able to do anything. We know that he has some kind of power. It seems like he can teleport almost instantly, and it doesn't make the Soru sound, so it's not high speed. It literally seems like he just disappears and reappears. So they got their work cut out for them, you know? The Seven Warlords of the Sea are not pushovers.
This doesn't seem likely, just because Oda likes to have his main characters handle things, but I like the idea of the Straw Hats being saved by all these other people who they've saved by defeating Moria. So maybe just Kuma will be faced with a mob of pirates who got taken out by Moria previously.
If his power only works when he asks people where they want to go and they answer, his weakness would be large crowds because he has to individually ask each one of them to set up the power, so they have time to overwhelm him.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I really don't think it's fair for us to speculate what's going to happen next because I think we have a pretty clear picture, but it seems like all of the Phantom 3 or whatever they're called, they all seem to be out. And Moria seems to have used all of his shadows in Shadow Asgard, so I don't think that there's going to be any kind of like they come back and they do something bad. I think it's just going to be Kuma, and who knows how that's going to go.
On the note of it being unfair for us to speculate, can I share a memory that's very precious to me?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so like I said, Joel played the Oars fight for me back when he was first trying to get me into One Piece. I got really excited. I started watching scenes on my own, and there is a scene from the next set of episodes that I got really excited about. And so as we started going through the series, I was sitting there waiting for it. And one day we go out to breakfast and we're talking about One Piece, and Joel goes, yeah, so what do you think is coming up? And I went, well, it's going to be this scene finally, right? And Joel like paused and he went, what? Why would you think that scene is next? And I went, because the background is the same. And like the look on his face, he was so mad that that was the thing that stuck in my memory. Mm-hmm. And so it makes me smile every time I remember that.
Goodness gracious, the background color. And if it were just like a gray background or like a forest background, I don't think you would have been able to do that because there's quite a few trees that we see throughout One Piece and stuff. But Yeah, it was related to how Thriller Bark looks as the sun just begins to rise. It's like a very distinctive purple and blue and whatnot. So, yeah, Catherine had this like, oh, is the big confrontation between character X and character Y happening? It's like, damn it. I do want to bring up really quickly, because I've mentioned this on Twitter a couple of times. There has actually been a study done on whether or not spoilers actually affect one's enjoyment of something. And this study, I'll try to find and I'll link it in the episode description. But essentially it discovered that even when people were told like who the monster was or who the killer was in a horror or mystery novel, typically they still reported really enjoying it. And honestly, if it weren't for spoilers, I wouldn't have gotten into Black Clover. I got into it because there was a specific character. If not for me showing Catherine all these amazing scenes of stuff that happened later, I don't know if she would have liked the earlier episodes of One Piece, that sort of thing. At the same time, there's a lot of people who don't like things to be spoiled for them, so don't spoil it for them, obviously. But it's interesting that there is such a culture built around, like, don't tell anyone the twists or whatever, when I think most of the time, twists aren't necessarily the big draw of something happening.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Well, and I've thought about this a lot, and I think for me, the reason I avoid spoilers specifically for movies that are kind of twisty is because I like to feel like I was smart enough to figure it out.
Oh, for sure.
And so
yeah.
if somebody tells me, I'm never going to have the proof that I could have figured it out. Right?
Okay.
But for something like One Piece, which I feel doesn't do as much of the twisty, oh no, you thought it was them, but it was actually these guys, it builds my enjoyment to see things ahead of time, because then I can look forward to that and I can see the ways that Oda is building to that thing as we get there.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think it depends on the property and on the person. You know, some people don't care about being smart. Some people don't care about themselves being smart, but they don't want it to be spoiled for their friends because they want to know if their friends are smart enough to see the twist coming.
Okay.
And they want to feel like, haha, they got you too, and their friends don't see it coming.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we are on is this episode 5 of Thriller Bark? And we only have 7 planned. And that last one is not actually Thriller Bark. It's another filler arc and then a movie. So our journey here is almost to an end. We've kind of breezed through Thriller Bark. It's a little smaller.
Do you feel like Thriller Bark is the perfect length for an arc?
About, yeah. I still think that some of the early faffing about could be tightened up a little bit, but for the most part, the battles don't feel like these big 30-part sagas. There's a battle in Naruto between Sasuke and some guy who can create exploding clay. I don't remember his name. And when I was reading that in the manga, I just felt like, oh my god, it's another chapter of this same fight. When's it going to end? And I know the Oars fight kind of goes on for a while, but it kind of comes down to, first he takes out each of the individual Straw Hats, then they team up and they take him down, and then Moria shows up, and then he takes out all of them, and then Nightmare Luffy. Like, there's enough variation that...
Yeah, it's not just two guys punching each other back and forth.
Yeah.
There's a fight against one of the warlords eventually that I felt like went on forever. I don't know if it actually went on for like 20 episodes, but it feels like it did.
Oh, geez, yeah. Well, and the pacing gets worse and worse. People who are watching along with us will notice that the previously on One Piece at the beginning of each episode gets longer and longer and longer, and we had a flashback to literally a line of dialogue from this episode in one of the episodes that we watched, but at the same time, the anime gives you the colors, it gives you the voice acting, it gives you the music. So I will defend the anime even knowing that the manga in many ways is superior.
You know what we got? You know what we got in these episodes? We got a walk.
Yes.
God, take a big old drink anytime the crew walks together in a badass way. I love it. And Robin got to be included in this one. Yes!
Oh, that is the first walk that Robin's been in, because the last 3, one was before she joined the crew, and then the other 2 were after she had left the crew and hadn't come back yet. But no, Oars takes out everyone, and he starts running around the island, because I think he still needs to find Nami or something, and it's all 6 of them walking towards him, and it's just their feet at first, and they're arguing about, what was the name of that thing that knocked us out? Was it Moors? No, I don't think so. Was it Stan? No, that's further away, and eventually they're like, oh, it's Oars, and then it zooms out, it's all 6 of them ready to fight.
And overtaken plays. Oh, it was so good. It was excellent. I loved it.
All right, now we get to go to the other thing that we like to do.
Thoughts from the crew.
Thoughts from the crew. We should maybe turn that into like an official hashtag maybe or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so I'm going to do these in the order that they appear on my Twitter timeline. One of the first responses we got was from Trey, longtime friend of the podcast, Raptorian XD. The crew working together is the big highlight. Everyone is worn out, Frankie is on fumes, but using Chopper's knowledge, a great plan, and the accumulated damage, Luffy is able to take him down. Something that we don't really get to see often in One Piece, but works so well. We have talked and gushed at length about the combo attacks, and it looks like a lot of the people who were reading, or who replied, felt the same way, that the teamwork is really cool, it's not something that you see very often, that sort of thing. One thing we did leave out of the summary and talking about was the fact that Chopper identified that Oars's right arm was particularly damaged from the frostbite that killed him, and so they try to focus their attack on the right arm.
So they could disable it.
And eventually when Luffy is about to use his Giganto bazooka, Oars is like, I'm gonna fight it back with my... Oh no, I can't move my arm! What? What is this? And Robin's like, that's the zombie's actual weakness. And you're like, oh, okay, that's awesome. Also from Trey, I also love how the whole shadow system works and how Oars got Luffy's strengths and weaknesses as well. Thriller Bark is so cool.
Thriller Bark is cool. I actually retweeted that tweet of Trey's with Thriller Bark is cool in all caps. One of the things I like in fantasy is a very well-structured magic system. I like my magic systems to have rules, and I like those rules to be consistent. And I think that One Piece does that really well. Each of the devil fruits has its own logic, but the logic makes sense, and it follows that logic consistently. It doesn't go, well, no, actually, they can also do this thing, because it would be cool if they did that.
Yes. Well, and it's especially consistent with the Logias and the Zoans, because those ones are very specific. The Paramecia is the catch-all, and so it's the one that is most likely to be like, well, it doesn't work on people with shadows. Oh, it doesn't work on days when it's sunny, and that sort of thing. But for the most part, it does make sense. And, I mean... in retrospect, it's kind of an obvious question. Like, you can put shadows in corpses. Can you put shadows in other things? How does that work? I hope that Moria comes back and he has found a new way to use his powers, because it feels like this power works in a very specific way, so there's only one way to optimize its power. Luffy is made out of rubber. How did that happen? But he can inflate his bones and increase the speed of his blood. Like, that's crazy. And Ace had, like, a couple of long-range attacks with his fire, so I definitely believe that different people with the same power could use them in different ways, but I don't know if there's a way to improve on the shadow aspect. So I'm hoping that I was like, oh yeah, Moria decided to get swole. He no longer looks like an onion. He looks like just a regular person. And he's found a way to combine the shadows into a sword. Like something like that. I'd love to see if Oda has another idea to kind of twist how the shadows work.
I agree. I hope this is the kick in the pants that Moria needed to improve himself. I don't think it will be, because like his whole crew was killed, and instead of taking that as the opportunity to improve himself, he took it as, oh, I should never have friends that are alive, which is an interesting lesson. I really do quickly want to go back to Trey's last point. You mentioned Chopper. I love that Chopper got to use his medical knowledge. Like, one of my complaints about Chopper is that I don't feel like he's utilized as often or as effectively as he could be.
Sure.
And so he's just sort of there to be cute, but I don't care about that. I like the smart, badass doctor persona, and I would love for him to get more opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I feel like Chopper and Nami and Robin are sometimes sidelined, and they're mostly there for merchandise. You know, Chopper's the cute one, and the two women are the women. You know what I'm saying, though? Like,
no,
you're not going to put Luffy in a bikini top. It wouldn't make sense, but Nami's right there. Anyways, so I do think that sometimes those three are kind of the most underutilized. And I feel like Usopp is kind of one of the most overutilized, or he has the most chances to be utilized, because his journey is so human compared to a guy who can kick through buildings and a guy who can cut through buildings. Like, that's not realistic.
Exactly. We got the return of a couple of Zoro's attacks.
Yes.
And we also got Gum Gum Storm again, which is cool, because...
Gum Gum Storm, the attack used to defeat Crocodile, Nightmare Luffy brought it back, and Oars' body looked like putty as he was being punched by all these powerful fists. And Zoro used Suns and Sekai, I don't remember what the first part of it is. It's secret technique and it's 3,000 realms. That's the attack he tried to use against Mihawk and it failed. But I don't think we've seen him use it since until now.
He also used Tower Climb, which he used against Kaku.
Yes, that's right, in order to try to attack upwards against a rather tall opponent. I think that was Oars. It was Oars. Okay, we have a comment from username Mac, but their @ is Red Hair Rants. I wonder if they're a fan of One Piece with a name like that. And Mac's profile picture is also of Perona, so I wonder if they're a fan. She said, I unreasonably love Nightmare Luffy, and if you ask me, I wouldn't be able to explain why. I need Nightmare Luffy to return. I don't know the context or how it would be possible make sense, but still, lol. Also, the Oars fight is much better than the Moria fight. And Kuma's here! We can't say much about Kuma, but
yeah,
all of the warlords are important in some way. I still think Crocodile's going to come back. I still think that his past is going to be relevant to something else. Doffy is everyone kind of looks at him and go, what's up with that weird flamingo guy, And Kuma is the one who doesn't say very much and has a weird teleport power, but Nightmare Luffy is good, and I think we should do an episode at some point, maybe a bonus episode, of power-ups or one-offs or something like that, because I think, to me, that's what makes Nightmare Luffy so special, is it's not going to be the Super Saiyan power-up that he pulls at the end of every single fight. It's something unique to this situation, and maybe in the next arc, if they fight a Cloud Man, maybe we'll get Cloud Luffy.
Well, and I know that in this particular fight, Luffy didn't have a ton of agency. The shadows were just kind of foisted upon him. But one of the things I love about Luffy as a protagonist is his ability to adapt to new situations, right? He realized that he could grab onto Crocodile when he was covered in blood, and so he's like, okay, I'm going to coat myself in water to fight you. He's fighting Moria, and Moria's shadows are making him too powerful, so Luffy fights him with himself full of shadows. Mm-hmm. So I like that a lot better than, well, I trained really hard in a chamber that simulates time, and now I have a power-up I can pull out whenever I want. I don't care.
Wow. That's awesome.
I don't know if I'm calling out any anime in particular, but Mac also said the teamwork aspect is a big reason why she likes the crew versus Oars fight so much more than the Moria fight. Also, Moria has never struck her as a very threatening antagonist. She always just feels kind of bad for him. One of my favorite things she said was, I feel kind of like a mom. Moria, pull yourself together. You can be better than this.
Oh yeah, for sure. She also added, and while Thriller Bark overall is not one of my personal favorite arcs, other than everything Perona related, of course, I definitely think it has one of the best endings. The tension and unease from now to the end of the arc is great. They have a ticking clock because the sun's about to come out. They thought they could rely on the fog protecting them, but it turns out Luffy's dumb shadow broke the rudder, and now they're going out into the clear sea. It's just wonderful in every way.
The storytelling in this arc is superb. Can I ask you about Perona really quick?
Yeah, what about her?
We'll make this really fast. What is it about Perona? And I don't think it's Perona specifically. I think it's the tsundere archetype in general. But what is it about these, cute but angry women that makes them such fan favorites, do you think?
That's a good question.
Is it juxtaposition between their cuteness and their meanness? You don't expect something so cute to be so mean?
I don't know. I really have always liked pink-haired characters, especially for female characters, and so I think that's part of it. If she had red or black hair, I don't know if it would have worked quite as well. She is very cute, and also I wonder, I'm not saying that this is true of everyone, but I do wonder if some of it might be a little bit of people who want women with step-on-me energy. Perona seems like the sort of person who would absolutely need to be the queen and who would absolutely step on the peons beneath her and stuff like that.
She's got a little bit of that Himadere energy.
Yeah, a little bit. But I'm really not sure what makes her so appealing as a character. She's kind of one of my favorites, but a lot of my female favorites in One Piece, because they don't always get the most fleshed out character, a lot of the times it's more of an aesthetic thing. I just like the idea of this girl who's pretty cute, hanging out with a shadow man, an invisible doctor, or a mad scientist doctor, because she thinks this is her ideal of cuteness. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Cool, you go, you funky little goth girl.
Absolutely. And we have one last comment. Would you like to read it out, or should I?
I can do it. So this is from the Jin Thank you so much, Jin, for always giving us such good feedback. But he says, dark setting, comedy, tragedy, combo attacks, zombies, ghosts, brooks, demon giant. This arc has everything anyone can ask for. The fights are spectacular, and the end of the arc put me on the edge of my seat every time I watch it, even though I know what's going to happen. Yes, I feel the same way. There are other moments in the series that are supposed to be tense. You're supposed to feel afraid for the crew, and none of them, for me, compare to watching the crew get stomped on by this mountain-sized giant. Yeah. I feel like my fear for the crew versus Oars was more genuine than any other time. They're all in peril.
Absolutely. I hope we see more of the demon giant. Spoiler alert, we don't get a ton of giants throughout the rest of the series. I mean, we haven't really gotten that many up till now, but some people, and I'm among them, wish or think that maybe there's like different breeds of giant or different types or different tribes, and we're hoping that maybe Oars' lineage and his people will come back in some way. Like, it feels like there's a reason his skin is red when the other giants we've met have been more human skin colored, and so yeah, show me the birthplace of all of these red giant demons or whatever. For sure. He leans much harder into Japanese Oni mythology than the other giants we've met. For sure. And that has been your doot final thought. Outro goes here. Thank you, as always, to everyone who reached out to us on Twitter. Every week, we put up, the episodes we're covering and ask for your feedback. So if you ever want to participate in that, just find us. And the next set of episodes that we will be covering for episode 94 of King of the What Now are 375 through 381. Basically all the time that's left on Thriller Bark. See you next time, folks. Bye. The word boat is inherently funny. Boat. Say it. Boat. Boat. Give that boat a boot. That's what I'm talking about. A bot. This is my goat boat. What a great episode of King of the What Now, your One Piece podcast that started from the very beginning and stars these two doofuses. If you want to follow us on social media, Twitter is the best place to do that. I am at KOTWN_pod. And I am at Pirate Ghost Host. Absolutely, yes. We share all sorts of thoughts on there, some related to the podcast, some related to other things. But you can also reach us through email at kingofthewhatpod@gmail.com, or you can also find us on Patreon. We would love some subscribers or supporters, whatever the technical term is. Patrons. So fancy and grown up. And you can find that at patreon.com/kingofthewhatpod. You can find all sorts of things like bonus episodes, and you get to see the full cold open candidates, not just the ones that make it into the episode. Maybe someday if I learn to draw, I'll put stuff up there. We're always looking for suggestions and feedback. And speaking of which, please take a moment to rate and review our podcast wherever you get us from. So iTunes, Spotify, Scrivener, that's for writing. But wherever you listen to our podcast, take a moment to leave a review. It helps other people find us. We are so grateful to all of our listeners, and we couldn't do this without you. Absolutely. Word of mouth is super powerful, so if you have a friend who likes One Piece and they haven't heard of us, just direct them to the latest episode. And if they hate us, they can tell us why. And if there's an actionable item, we'll try to please you. That's how this works. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.